is the story of John Woodson and Sarah Winston, my ninth great-grandparents, and our immigrant ancestors who came to Jamestown, Virginia. The name Woodson is an old, prominent name in the early history of England. In the early part of the 16th century, one of Dr. Woodson's ancestors was granted a coat of arms by Henry VIII. Along with the privilege came the right to bear arms. John Woodson was born in 1586 in Devonshire, England. John Woodson attended Oxford and became a doctor. He was the fifth son, and although his family was prominent, he would not get much inheritance. His father died in 1618, about the year he married his wife. His family were from the Church of England in faith, but John fell in love with a little Quaker lady named Sarah Winston, and rather than make her give up her religion, he forfeited his own inheritance as a baron and married Sarah. When Governor Yardley offered him a flattering gift of landholdings in the New World, he accepted the task of becoming the ship's surgeon and later the physician for a company of soldiers that were stationed in Jamestown, and he came over with the new governor and 100 passengers on the ship George. This ship left England on January 29, 1619. On April 19, 1619, nearly a full year before the Mayflower landed in Plymouth, the George arrived in Jamestown, Virginia. There is well authenticated tradition that en route by sea, Lady Yardley suffered greatly from a malady known as sickness of the stomach, or seasickness, and Sarah, in her kindness of heart, was a faithful attendant to the governor's wife, which cemented a friendship that would never be broken throughout their lives. After reaching Virginia under the guidance of Governor Yardley, 11 boroughs were formed which allowed 2 representatives each, and they formed what would become the House of Burgesses. The governor and the council of the General Assembly was convened at Jamestown on July 1619 as the first legislative body to function in Virginia. Dr. John Woodson is listed as a member in the Colonial Dame Register of Virginia as one of the historic founders of the colony of Virginia. Dr. Woodson and his wife Sarah settled in an area known as Fleur de Hundred, approximately 30 miles northwest of Jamestown, on the south side of the James River. This was a private plantation owned by Governor Yardley, and named after his wife, Temperance Fleurdeau. The Yardleys owned the plantation, and in 1624 it was sold to Abraham Pearsley. There's a dark side to this story, as sometime later in 1619, a vessel landed at Jamestown handing on board about 20 Negro captives whom the Dutch skipper had kidnapped somewhere off the coast of Africa. These were sold as the first slaves to the colonists. They were found to be quite profitable in the cultivation of tobacco, which was a staple crop at that time. Dr. John Woodson at this time or shortly afterwards bought 6 of these Africans, who were registered in 1623 as part of his household without giving them any names. With a population of about 30, Fleur de Hundred plantation was economically successful, with thousands of pounds of tobacco produced along with corn, fish, and livestock. The plantation survived the 1622 onslaught of the Powhatan Indians, losing only 6 people. The colonists retaliated and drove the Indians deeper into the wilderness. They settled in and made their home. 2 sons were born at Fleur de Hundred. John was born in 1632, and Robert was born in 1637. Robert Woodson is my grandchildren's 10th great-grandfather. 22 years had passed since the first Indian uprising chief, Opachacano, had matured another scheme for the onslaught of the whites. On April 18, 1644, Powhatan Indians attacked Flower Dew Plantation. The Indians were led by Opachacano, who was the son of Powhatan, and had killed 300 settlers on April 18th. Dr. Woodson was not home at the time of the attack. It was later discovered that Dr. Woodson was returning from treating a patient and was killed within the sight of his own home by the Powhatan before he could get his rifle ready. During the attack, Sarah hid her children. One was put in a potato pit and the other in a washtub. John was in the washtub and Robert was in the potato pit. She gave her husband's rifle to Colonel Robert Ligon, who happened to be visiting at the time and waiting for her husband to return home. Ligon killed 7 of the Indians with the old muzzle-loading gun, which was 8 feet long. This is now one of the prized possessions of the Virginia Historical Society in Richmond. As if to commemorate his bravery on this historic occasion, the name Ligon was rudely carved upon the stock of the gun. Meanwhile, two Indians tried to come down the chimney of the house. Upon hearing the noise on the roof and in the chimney, she threw fire on the bed of coals and started the smoke to bring the Indians down. She dispatched them by seizing a pot of boiling water from the fire, and scalded the first Indian. She snatched up her iron spit from the fireplace and brained the second Indian. The howling Indians began to retreat, but the schoolmaster fired a last shot, killing two more of the enemy. Then the mother called the two boys, ages 8 and 10, from their hiding places, and later they discovered her husband's body. Several weeks later, Opachicano was captured by the colonists and executed. The Indians were permanently driven out of that part of Virginia as a result of the uprisings of 1644. From this circumstance, for several generations, the descendants of one of these boys was called Tub Woodson, and the other was designated Potato Hole Woodson. Robert and John Woodson were numbered among the tithables at Currell's plantation in 1679. Currell's plantation was on the north side of the James River, near Florida 100, but across the river. This plantation was once owned by Robert Woodson's father-in-law, Richard Ferris. Robert had 9 children. After John Woodson's death, his Sarah married a Mr. Dunwell and then a Mr. Johnson, and was widowed both times. Sarah died in 1660 in Henrico County, Virginia. In her will, she left her children a cow and a feather bed. Dr. John Woodson is the progenitor of all the Woodson family in America. Among his descendants include Dolly Todd Madison, the wife of President James Madison, and the famous outlaw Jesse Woodson James.